Please watch the video until the end. Chapter 1, The Distant Howl. They say the town forgets things the way fog forgets trees, slowly, until nothing remains but an impression. I was a stranger when I came back, thick-backed, with a city job that left my hands clean and my nights empty, but Hollow Creek remembered me. It remembered the prank I had played as a boy, the promise I had whispered beneath an old sycamore, and the way my father taught me to listen for danger in the rustle of leaves. The first howl came on a Tuesday. It threaded through the alleys and slipped into the bar where I was drinking alone, chasing a ghost of courage with cheap whiskey. People froze mid-sentence, glasses held like fragile hearts. They said the sound made the lights dim for a breath, others said it made the dogs sleep with one eye open. It sank into me with no respect for the years I had built between then and now. Something about the way it landed on my chest woke something that had slept a long time. A memory of raw fear, of fur against skin, of teeth that were not like the ordinary teeth of wolves but like the weathered stones of a graveyard. I told myself it was only a dog, or the wind, or the old nerves of a town that had never gotten over its past. I was trying to be reasonable. Until the cut. It was a shallow nick on my forearm, an accident, I promised myself, caught on a rusted nail as I crawled under the porch of the house I'd inherited. The blood looked ordinary, bright and immediate, but it spread across my skin like an ink blot. When I pressed my palm to it, the wetness felt both foreign and intimate, like someone else's memory beneath my fingertips. I should have washed it away, but I let it bead and dry as if the drying might keep something else from waking up. Chapter 2, The Scar. By the second week, the town's unease grew teeth. The hardware store closed early. A woman named Mabel, who claimed she had seen more grief than most of us could count, tied garlic to her windows and laughed, but her hands trembled. The sheriff joked at the diner, thinly, and liked his coffee black enough to match the mood. My arm began to itch in the way old injuries itch, a signal sent through the body as if it were an instrument tuned to a certain strain. The scar, which had seemed dull and stupidly small, warmed at odd hours. At midnight I woke with the sensation that something had brushed my arm, not a hand, not a paw, but the passing of something that left the skin humming. Sleep fled from me. In the awake hours I found myself walking the town in a fog of compulsion, down to the river, past the children's abandoned playground, along the ridge where the sycamores cast their long fingers. I called it wandering. My mother called it not sleeping. The truth was uglier, my muscles remembered a cadence of stalking, the architecture of a body set to pounce. I tried to resist. I bought more shirts to hide the scar. I trusted in locks and the logic of daylight. That night the moon came like a coin being flipped, and the light that silvered the world seemed to measure me the way a jeweler measures a stone. It revealed all the tiny, hidden facets of my hands, the way my knuckles enlarged, the hair on the back of my neck feathered into something coarser, the nails that shone with a new, animal sheen. I told myself it was the light. I closed my eyes and prayed to sleep. The prayer failed. Chapter 3, The Blood Moon. They called it the red moon in the diner, an old superstition that layered itself onto the week like mold. I remembered stories from childhood, whispered behind the curtains, about men who became wolves when the sky bled. I had laughed then. I did not laugh now. The thing inside me had patterns. It learned the edges of my life, where I kept the car keys, which route to the pharmacy cut through lighted streets, how to time a heartbeat with the crowd so I could move unnoticed. On the night the moon turned red, it found every crack in my patience. I was awake and sitting on the back step when an ache bid me to stand. The ache moved outward from the scar like a reptile sliding free of its old skin. The transformation knocked me from myself as if a hulking tide had replaced my bones. Pain was a map, but my hands were not my hands. I remember the smell of iron, the way words dissolved into animal thought, a clarity of purpose so old it tasted like stone. I remember the howl I released from somewhere below speech, an unnameable throat sound that curdled the air. They say that on the other side of transformation you do not immediately become what you will be, you become the idea of it, clumsy and curious. I ran. I moved through the town that had raised me as if I were a new species, my ears pruning sound into only what mattered. People slept. Dogs barked and then fell silent. Lights blinked out, as if whatever light remained could not bear the sight. I killed once that night. The memory is a fragment, a flaring red, a twitching shadow, a lip that pulled back to show teeth. It was not malice. It was hunger and habit and the old, patient rule of survival. Morning found me on the ridge, caked in mud and cold sweat, the world arranged like evidence against me. Chapter 4, The Hunt. Hollow Creek was a small place. News moved faster than the sheriff, and when the first body was found at dawn, throats savagely opened, animal prints pressed into the loam, the town's small sanity frayed. Fingers pointed in every direction. Superstition bled into accusation. I wanted to confess. I wanted to stand in the square and tell them what I had become and beg for absolution that would never come. Instead I learned to hide. I found ways to stitch myself back together, ice on the swelling, friction to calm the fur, a chain around the crate in the barn when the moons were bright. I became a creature of intervals, keeping the hours of humanity as a thing to be valued and traded. But the creature inside me is older than bargains. It keeps hours on a different clock. On days when I was human, I watched the world for hunters, the men who whispered in the tavern about silver and packs and prepared themselves with bullets polished like promises. There is a particular look to a man who believes he has the line on something sacred. It is arrogant and small and full of borrowed righteousness. The hunt turned inward. The townspeople formed rituals as if ritual had always been the cure, hanging charms, painting symbols on doors, posting watchmen with pitchforks at dusk. The sheriff, a man once careful with names, grew quiet and careful with words. He lost his taste for jokes. I watched him from the shadows and felt guilt slice me more precisely than any silver blade could. Chapter 5, The Thing Within. The thing within me began to learn shame. That was the last human lesson it borrowed. Perhaps it was the face of my sister, Flora, smaller by a year, who still left her lamp lit for me when I was drunk as a kid, that cracked the beast's arrogance. Or perhaps it was the sound of my mother crying when I told her I would not come home for dinner. Whatever the cause, guilt made space within the animal for a different weight. We tried to negotiate. The human part of me sketched rules on paper and pinned them beneath rocks. Do not hunt inside town. Do not harm the ones you love. Do not linger at thresholds. These rules are thin armor. They can be bent, and they can be broken. It was the sheriff who found me the night the compromise failed. He cornered me in the barn, pitchfork in trembling hands, belief lined up like iron. He looked at me with eyes that had once been kind and saw a monster. I saw in him the same fear that had made me run as a child from a schoolyard bully. He raised the pitchfork like a judge delivering a final sentence. I remember his name like a rope around my chest as he screamed, and I answered with something that was no longer a man's voice. The barn filled with the sound of our two natures colliding. The end was not glorious, it was a tangle of grief, a heap of torn straw and regret. He did not deserve it. No one does. Chapter 6, Dawn and Aftermath. Dawn was not mercy. It was a clarifying lens that left little room for excuses. The town gathered like a jury. Faces I had known my whole life stood split between fury and fear. The sheriff lay in the dust with his face slack, and the evidence of my night soaked into the soil like ink. I stood exposed as truth, as a thing that could not be polished away. People talked of lynching, of burning the house, of banning the moons. Children peered from behind their mothers, and I saw in their eyes the same raw curiosity that had once led me to poke the edge of the unknown with a stick. The boy I had been would have been fascinated. The man I had become felt only the irreversible. Something inside me broke apart then, like a mirror struck clean, and what came through was not holy beast nor holy man but a tired, aching continuity of both. I chose a path people do not often imagine. I told them everything. I spoke of the scar, the hunger, the ways the world shifts under certain lights. I did not ask for forgiveness because I did not expect it. I asked for time to leave, for a chance to walk into a place where my crimes could not echo on those I loved. They allowed it grudgingly, more a command than a blessing. I left before the moon rose again. I walked until Hollow Creek was a smudge and then a memory, the scar on my arm a map I could never stop reading. Somewhere beyond the ridge, I found a hollow in the earth and made my bed in the roots of long-dead trees. The beast sleeps now with its head on a human pillow and dreams that are half-remembered like things you only glimpse from a window as you drive by. Sometimes at night I hear a howl in the distance and I answer because answering is all I have left. And sometimes, when the moon is generous in its cruelty, I look at the town that shaped me and I wonder which of us is cursed, the man who becomes the wolf, or the place that refuses to forgive the wolf when it returns to the bones of what it once was. Please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give a like to the video, comment on the video and share the video.